All right, let's talk about 7 winners. So I made a negative 7 losers video, but let's have a little bit more positivity here. Let's give credit to the teams that I thought did a good job this draft, and there were a lot. Like there was a lot of teams I thought like had great drafts that like I didn't even consider putting on this list because like I just couldn't fit them. So obviously it's just for round one. Some of these teams, this will shuffle around as more picks are made, but for round one, these are the 7 winners of round one. And I'm going to start off with the Bears, who, listen, they're not on this list because of Caleb Williams, because the way I view winners and losers of the draft is not who got the most talent, because, if you have the first overall pick, you should get a lot of talent. I put them on the list of, did you get more talent than I expected you to get entering the night? And they did. The Romeo Dunze was a kind of a great pick. I just realized I accidentally said the Minnesota Vikings on my thumbnail, so I gotta edit that real quick. But it was a great pick by the Chicago Bears to go out and get him. I think he's a really good player and will really complete that receiving core in a lot of ways. So yeah, a really big fan of that, and obviously didn't screw up the Caleb Williams pick, so good job there. My second winner on the list is the New England Patriots. Again, I kind of went back and forth, but that's at a certain point I just said, you know what? Number 2 on the consensus big board, and number 2 on my board was Drake May. They get him at 3. They don't trade out, and they still get a good quarterback. Like, this is a win for me. It just is. I'm sure Patriots fans are thrilled about this. I think that, Drake May is a flawed quarterback, and, like, the criticism about him are fair. Every criticism about Drake May is a fixable issue. Now, will he fix those issues? I have no idea. And that's a very fair question. But I do think that, I think that he's a really good player. And I think that kind of the criticism got a bit overblown for me. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders make my winners. So finally the Raiders get on a winners list. They've been on too many losers lists over the years. They make the winners list. Brock Bowers. It was funny. I talked about this in my video about them where, I made a what if every team, what do I think will happen draft, and they ended up with Brock Bowers. And it was one of those things where Brock Bowers just kind of happened to fall due to various circumstances. And so because of that, he ended up going there to the Raiders. And when I made that pick, I said, okay, well, this isn't going to happen. This is where my draft will fall apart, because obviously he's going to be selected before 13. No, he wasn't. He was selected at 13. He should have been selected before 13 because he's really good. It's just one of those things where I think the Kyle Pitts not being awesome has kind of maybe gotten people a little bit more concerned about the quote-unquote elite level tight end. But like, for what it's worth, I had Bowers as a higher prospect than I did Kyle Pitts. I like them both, but I did have Bowers with a higher grade. I think he's a really good player, and I think teams maybe overthought this a little bit, or just teams were not needing that. A lot of teams that wanted weapons were able to get wide receivers, right? Like the Bears at 9 got a wide receiver, and then the Jets, they wanted their tackle. There were 6 quarterbacks taken. It just kind of worked out that the Raiders were able to sit where they were at, didn't have to trade up, and still got an elite level, prospect who I think is, if you take out positional value, is as good as any other prospect in this draft. Like, he is really good. So yeah, they make my winners list. Next, the team that made my losers list last year, and Lions fans and I are still arguing about if that was fair or not, but the Lions make my winners list. So maybe Lions fans are concerned about it because obviously their draft as a whole ended up being really good last year. But for the Lions, I think trading up to get Terrion Arnold is a really good move. I think he'll fit really well for them. I think it's a really good scheme fit. In fact, I didn't talk about that a lot. I talked about that, I made a film study on it, so I talked about that there, but in the kind of intro to the film study, didn't bring that up. But I do think he's a really good scheme fit. I think they could really use a corner, so going out and getting a guy who could be really good for them, honestly, like, the Lions have had an awesome offseason. I really think the Lions have had, maybe my favorite offseason, to be honest. They kind of view this year as a bit of an all-in year, which I think is correct. Like, they were able to jump teams like Tampa Bay and Green Bay, who might have gone out and gotten Arnold, and even Arizona might have gotten him. I don't know if they would have. I don't know. But making that move, I think, was smart. Yes, you're giving up draft capital to do it, but they need a player who can play day one. Like, that's what they need. you're in an all-in push, go out and make that work. I think it was smart. The Jacksonville Jaguars make my list here as they get Brian Thomas Jr., which could end up being the steal of the draft. At pick 23, there is could he be a bit of a Justin Jefferson-y type player, just in the sense of, again, I'm not saying he'll be as good as Justin Jefferson, but in the sense of he has the elite physical tools. There are some issues and maybe just some bit of question marks, mostly due to things he hasn't had to do because he wasn't asked to do everything at LSU because they had really good, they had Malik Neighbors across the field a lot of times. So he was asked to do kind of the tougher stuff. But that doesn't mean Thomas Jr. can't also do that tough stuff. And the Jaguars traded back and still got their guy and got some extra draft picks. And they could really use a receiver. This was a perfect fit, perfect player, kind of a bit of a steal, and they get extra draft capital there, but trade back to do it. That's on the list of winners for me. I also had the Philadelphia Eagles. Quinyon Mitchell makes my list, who is a really good prospect, and was, I believe, number 12 on the consensus big board. And of course, the Eagles just sit where they're at, don't do any trade-ups or anything, just let the good player fall to them, and the good player happened to be a position of need this time as well. It's what the Eagles do. The Eagles pretty much always just go after best player available. It's what they did here, and it was really smart. So yeah, they make my list they're my sixth team. My final team to make this list, and I went back and forth on this team. I think you could argue other teams. I went with the Minnesota Vikings. Listen, they had 2 first-round picks. That's what we knew they were going to have going into the draft. So we're kind of taking that out of the equation. They got J.J. McCarthy and didn't have to trade up a ton to do it. They traded up one spot, just kind of almost hey, let's just get our guy. Maybe it was a bit antsy, but I don't know. Would the Broncos or the Raiders have tried to jump up? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that was the Jets saying, oh yeah, there's totally teams trying to get that draft pick. You better trade up one pick to make it happen. I don't know. Maybe. But they didn't give up a ton for it. Going out and getting J.J. McCarthy, who, again, whether you love him or hate him, there's plenty to like about him. And I think that there is potential. And to get a guy who, I don't know, I have him in the same tier as Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix. Penix was my favorite out of those receivers, out of those quarterbacks, actually. But, take your pick. Quarterbacks is notoriously difficult to evaluate. Sometimes it's smarter to, when you have a few guys in the same tier, just get the last guy because they're in the same tier instead of trying to trade up and get the first guy. So I like what they did. And of course, they also got Dallas Turner, who I wasn't as crazy about as some other people are, but he is one of those prospects that has grown on me a bit. And I think perhaps I could end up being too harsh on him when it's all said and done. So I really like Dallas Turner. He could be a Danielle Hunter replacement, and because of that, even though they did have to give up some draft capital to trade up, they got the 2 players they wanted, and those could be cornerstone pieces when it's all said and done. So yeah, they make my list at number 7. Yeah, that is my 7 winners. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.